people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News. Okay, we'll start with this. Per a tweet from Mike Copinger, Caleb Plant was set to fight Trevor McCumby on August 17th in Orlando, Florida, but the bout was postponed after McCumby suffered a cut over his right eye, sources tell ESPN. The super middleweight bout, set to be the PBC's first non-pay-per-view Prime Video headliner, will be rescheduled. PBC is planning several Prime Video shows in the fall that won't appear on pay-per-view.
So this is peculiar.
Why?
This is peculiar because why would you have to reschedule the whole show for Trevor McCumby? He's not indispensable to the card. He's not the big name. Caleb is the big name.
If he were the one that were dropping out, if he were the one that were injured, I could see this is all intended to be a rebound fight for him. It's not about Trevor. It's about Caleb.
It's supposed to be.
Caleb Plant, the former champion, was going to attempt to rebound off his loss to David Benavidez last year on this show. Stephen Fulton, he was supposed to be rebounding off his loss to Naoya Inoue as well. It's been over a year since Stephen Fulton fought.
I think it's been over a year since both of those guys fought.
Stephen Fulton, noticeably upset, took to his social media and said, on the verge of snapping, I controlled myself for as long as I can. When I'm there, don't play the victim. 18 years of boxing, this shit is getting me heated now. I stayed quiet about a lot of shit. Everybody stay in their lane and out of my way, and we're good.
Think he's upset over the cancellation?
Well, I don't imagine that he's happy about it. It's been over a year since the guy fought. Should it really take that long to get Stephen Fulton back out there and get him a rebound fight?
Should it take this long to get Caleb back out there?
Boxing insider Rick Glacier reacted to news of the cancellation and said, of course the PBC non-pay-per-view Amazon Prime show was canceled. Since when does a no-name B-side pull out 26 days before the show and the show gets canceled? Why didn't they just get a new opponent for Caleb? Because it was never happening. More PBC, Babaluba.
What do you think about that?
I think Rick is onto something. Because if this show was supposed to be going down August 17th, that means that it was supposed to go down in a little over 4 to 5 weeks' time. But the show was never actually officially announced.
There's no official announcement.
It was just rumors. Rumors of a non-pay-per-view show that was set to go down next month. Though with less than 6 weeks to promote it, in the absence of an official announcement, it is questionable as to whether or not it was ever going to happen.
And so it was at the beginning of this year that veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael said that the PBC would be doing their first non-pay-per-view show in the month of June. The month of June came and went, and that didn't happen. The only show the PBC did in the month of June was the Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight.
That was a pay-per-view.
Rumors of the PBC's first non-pay-per-view show went from happening in the month of June to happening in the month of August, and Caleb Plant was supposed to be headlining. Once again,
It's not happening.
if you're paying attention, the PBC has not done any shows in the month of July. It doesn't look like they're going to be doing any shows in the month of August.
It's questionable whether or not they're going to be doing any shows in the month of September, since Canelo Alvarez may end up fighting Edgar Berlanga, a Matchroom fighter.
He's a Matchroom guy. Matchroom might end up promoting that show, and DAZN may end up distributing it.
Situation like that, what would Canelo Alvarez need from the PBC?
What's your point?
That the PBC is operating at a much reduced capacity than they used to. No shows in the month of July, no shows in the month of August. They may not do a show in September. As it stands, they will have only done 3 shows, a grand total of 3 shows, and all 3 of them were pay-per-views, 7 going on 8 months into this calendar year. It's not looking good.
When you can't even get 2 of your former champions, 2 guys that you're supposed to be invested in, a rebound fight in a timely fashion, when this is what's going on.
It's indicative of the PBC's lack of resources at this point in the juncture. I told you guys a long time ago, the Amazon deal and its structure is not akin to what PBC had going on with Fox or what they had going on with Showtime. No, Amazon to the PBC is just a distributor. They're not giving them any money. So, without a major platform, giving you a budget so that you can do regular shows, non-pay-per-view shows throughout the calendar year.
You can't do them.
Because you don't have the money. All you can do are box office fights, pay-per-view fights, which is tantamount to crowd-funded boxing.
And that's all they've done. All they've done are pay-per-views.
The difference between a regular fight and a pay-per-view fight is, with the pay-per-view, whatever you put in, you at least have the chance of getting your money back. Whatever you spent to do that show, that's with a pay-per-view. But with a non-pay-per-view,
how are you supposed to get your money back? And if Amazon isn't giving you a budget, whose money were you going to spend to even do that non-pay-per-view show?
how are they supposed to get their money back? If Amazon's not giving you a budget, but somehow, some way you find some cash to do a non-pay-per-view show, how are you supposed to get any kind of an ROI on that when Plant versus McCumby's not a hot ticket? That's not a fight people are climbing over each other to see. What, you were going to get it at the gate?
Another empty promise.
Mike Kopinger's sources say that the PBC have quote-unquote several non-pay-per-view shows they plan on doing later on in the year. Who's going to pay for those shows? The PBC struck this deal with Amazon late last year, and you're telling me it won't be until late this one till they start doing non-pay-per-view shows, regular shows, just like Top Rank, just like Matchroom, just like Queensberry, Golden Boy, all the other games,
Boxer,
all the other promoters. They do regular shows. They're not exclusively doing box office fights.
What do they have that the PBC doesn't?
A budget. A broadcast partner that gives them a budget, an annual budget to do shows throughout the calendar year. That's what they have.
PBC don't have that.
It's why the decision to call off this show in its entirety is leaving many scratching their heads, like Raging Babe, who asked, there was plenty of time to find a replacement, no? I'm confused.
You called off the whole show because of Trevor McCumby. Is he indispensable to the show?
You couldn't find another guy like that for Caleb Plant's big comeback fight? Isn't the whole point of this seeing Caleb Plant return to action? Or was it about Trevor McCumby? That both Stephen Fulton and Caleb Plant are still even over there, waiting for fight dates, is a real mystery in and of itself after so many fighters have already jumped ship. Elvis Rodriguez, Michelle Rivera, Jaleel Hackett, Richardson Hitchens,
Subriel Matias,
Jaron Ennis, arguably. A lot of people were expecting Jaron Ennis to make a commitment to the PBC after he achieved free agency earlier this year, and instead of going with the PBC, he went to Matchroom. The writing is on the wall. Apparently Caleb and Stephen don't want to read it.
What does it say that Brandon Lee, unbeaten Brandon Lee, instead of sticking it out with the PBC, he decided to go to Queensberry, a UK-based promotional outfit for a fighter based in America. What does it tell you that Brandon went over there instead of staying with the PBC? What does that say about the PBC?
And you know that Brandon has a fight coming up. Brandon has a fight date where Caleb and Stephen, they don't. Now they just have to wait and hope that this card gets rescheduled for later on in the year.
Both Caleb and Stephen are coming off of losses. They need a rebound fight. Shouldn't take this long.
There are lots of potential fights to make for Stephen Fulton at featherweight, where he's going to be campaigning moving forward. There are lots of fights to make for him. There are even more fights to make for Caleb Plant, one of the established names at super middleweight. You could make a fight between him and Diego Pacheco, Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, Christian Mabili,
For good money.
Bektemir Melikuziev, but none of those fights make sense until Caleb has a rebound fight, and apparently he's not going to have it. Not yet, because he's still relying on the PBC to do fights for him. If he changed his decorum, he probably would have got out there already by now.
Trevor McCumby. It should take them this long to do a fight with a guy like Trevor McCumby.
Doesn't make a ton of sense. It doesn't make a ton of sense for anybody to attach themselves to the PBC, what seems like a sinking ship.
Stay attached.
But they are, and that's why they aren't fighting next month. You know who is? Bektemir Melikuziev, who I mentioned earlier. Golden Boy Promotions is Bektemir Melikuziev, who says his next fight will be on the Virgil Ortiz Jr. undercard in August. Melikuziev, 14-1 with 10 knockouts, is hopeful he'll land the top 10 opponent to aid his rise towards a spot closer to challenge undisputed champion Canelo Alvarez or to fight for the WBA's secondary belt. His opponent has yet to be finalized. To me, it doesn't make a difference who I fight. Melikuziev said of the DAZN show, I'm very happy to be back. Whoever's the opponent, I'll be ready. As long as I'm getting opportunities on big shows and getting on TV, that's all I need to get at that title.
Getting opportunities, he's getting them.
Especially now that Golden Boy Promotions has paired up with Turki Al Sheikh And Riyadh season, there are going to be even more opportunities on that side of the street, the kind that Caleb Plant needs.
But Bektemir Melikuziev has.
Makes no difference to me who's in front of me, tall, skinny, fat. If I'm in good shape, I'm going to do what I do. Melikuziev has won 7 consecutive fights since a surprise knockout loss to veteran Gabe Rosado back in 2021. He avenged the loss to Rosado by UD last year. That was a very good thing that happened for me, the best thing, he said, because for 10 years, I was destroying every person they put in front of me, from the amateurs to heavyweights. I wasn't worrying about anything. I wasn't living an athlete's life, messing around, eating the wrong stuff. That thing that happened to me made me think about everything and get better physically.
You know what they say, you learn more from defeat than you do in victory, too much victory, and you develop a false sense of security.
Now I'm a different fighter. Returning to training this week beside WBA junior middleweight champion Israel Madrimov and former junior featherweight Mutajan Akhmadaliev in Indio, Melikuziev was working out of a home with the Uzbekistan Olympic team. The 7 members of the country's 2016 team, including Akhmadov and Shakram Gayasov, vowed to become world champions, and all 7 currently reside in a top 10 position. Melikuziev, nicknamed the Bully, said he's appreciative of the support he receives from his promoter Oscar De La Hoya to complement the daily training by veteran cornerman Joel Diaz. He feels it has made him one of the division's most avoided opponents, noting how former title challenger Sergey Didivianchenko and Steven Nelson withdrew from talks to fight him. Nelson for a spot on the August 3rd card in LA, headlined by the fighter's best-known teammates Madrimov and Crawford.
Sergey Didivianchenko ducked this guy?
I wouldn't say that. Sergey Didivianchenko is about to fight unbeaten Christian Mabili. Maybe the offer for Mabili was better than the offer for Melikuziev. We want bigger names if possible, Melikuziev said. The reality is most of them won't fight me. We were supposed to fight Didivianchenko and Steven Nelson. The fights never happened. We were supposed to fight for the mandatory position against David Morrell. No one wants to fight him. I did. Melikuziev would consider a move to light heavyweight, but another teammate, WBA champion Dmitry Bivol, is one of Melikuziev's best friends, and they've promised to never fight. Bivol may own all 4 belts at 175 very soon if he can defeat 3-belt champion Artur Beterbiev October 12th in Saudi Arabia. I was a cruiserweight in the amateurs, Melikuziev said. I was always shorter, smaller, undersized, but it was never an issue. My power was always the equalizer. With all of the belts held hostage by Canelo and none of the sanctioning bodies pushing him to fight, it doesn't make any difference to go to 175.
I don't agree with that. I don't think Canelo's holding the belts hostage.
Bektemir Melikuziev is an interesting character because he comes from a good amateur background and he's a big puncher. The bully, as they like to call him. That's how he fights. And he makes for some exciting fights if he can get the right names. However, he did set himself back getting knocked out by Gabe Rosado. That's just the reality of it. So where he may feel that he's avoided, it's more like he's a member of the Who Needs You club.
What does he have that anybody would want?
I'm not against him getting the kind of opportunities that he's looking for, but risks versus rewards is a recurring theme in the sport of boxing. So when faced with fighting him versus fighting someone else, you have to ask, what does Bektemir Melikuziev actually have that somebody would want? The saving grace is that now that Golden Boy Promotions has paired up with Turkey Al Sheikh for Riyadh season, maybe Turkey can help to get Bektemir the kind of fights that he hasn't been having.
Maybe he can get the winner of Mabili versus Didivianchenko.
Maybe things can start to happen for Bektemir Melikuziev, who is an interesting character at 168 pounds, but he hasn't had a signature fight yet, a signature moment. Things for sure. So long as he stays in the winner's bracket, he's got a lot more opportunities on the horizon at his disposal than the kids over there at the PBC. They need to get with it. Finally, in men's heavyweight news, this weekend, we're going to be seeing Olympian Joe Joyce return to action opposite the ring the grizzled veteran Derek Chisora in a fight whose outcome isn't necessarily hard to call, but it still makes for a good fight. As Joe Joyce likes to throw punches, Derek Chisora likes to throw punches. They're both mid-range to inside fighters, similar age bracket, Derek and Joe, but Derek has a lot more experience as a professional as opposed to an amateur. He's got a lot more experience as a professional than Joe Joyce does. Last time we saw Joe, he was in there with Cash Ali.
He did what he needed to do. Didn't look spectacular.
He got the knockout. He eventually got the knockout. I remember it being late into the fight, though he didn't look nothing spectacular. en route to it. It appears that in some ways, he's still on easy street. And I don't mean that as a knock on Derek Chisora or a knock on this fight.
Because I like it.
However, that succession of fights, from Cash Ali to Derek Chisora, indicates to me that he's not quite ready for a serious opponent, a more serious fight. Remember that Joyce was a guy they were telling you would beat up everybody, walk through everybody, Anthony Joshua included.
Usyk included, Fury included.
He had built up considerable momentum after stopping Daniel Dubois, stopping Joseph Parker, being the first to do it. There were a lot of people who were already sold on Joyce, but I wasn't.
He ran into a brick wall named Zilei Chang.
Fought Chang 2 times, lost 2 times, got stopped 2 times. So the momentum has slowed, and he's been taking it easy. He's on easy street. I mean, from Cash Ali to today's Derek Chisora, who a lot of people are calling to retire.
He might after this weekend.
Needless to say that the perception that Joyce is going to walk through everybody in a heavyweight division, that perception has changed. And thus, he's fighting Derek Chisora this weekend in a fight that I think will have a fan-friendly aesthetic because they're both mid-range to inside guys who throw punches and bunches.
Neither one is big on defense.
Joe is the more statuesque fighter of the two, a bit taller, a bit longer, whereas Derek is the shorter, stumpier fighter, bobbing and weaving to bring over overhand rights, big looping rights. I actually expect him to land those big right hands.
Several fighters already have landed big right hands on Joyce. Daniel Dubois, Christian Hammer, even Cash Ali got in with a few in Joe's last fight.
I expect that Derek Chisora will this weekend, but I don't expect it's going to be enough to get Joe off of him. No, I don't expect it's going to be enough to hold Joyce back. That's how he got that reputation for having a cast iron chin. All the punches he's able to absorb.
You think he can still absorb punches the same way that he used to after those Zhang fights?
I mean, Derek Chisora is not Zilei Zhang. He's not as big a guy. There's not as much on the punch. Derek is nowhere near as explosive as he used to be here today. So while I do think he's going to get in with those big right hands, I don't think it's going to be enough to keep Joe off of him. I expect a referee stoppage.
Joe's going to stop Derek. I think he is.
He's going to put punches together within close quarters, and I think the referee is going to have to save Derek once Derek can't save himself. He's too brave for his own good. Why else would he take on a fight like this at this stage in his career? Derek is not one to shy away from a challenge. Biting off more than he can chew here, and I think Joe is going to stop him. Joe's going to stop him mid to late.
But it'll be fun to watch.
As neither one of these two guys are defensive wizards, they're both offensively minded fighters that like to throw punches and bunches. It's everything you want in a heavyweight contest. So I anticipate it's going to be a fun fight while it lasts, but it's not going to last all that long. And when it's over, Joe will have knocked out Derek.
What does he do after that?
Well, he can go after the winner of Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. I wouldn't mind that.
I think Anthony's going to win that fight.
To get to Anthony, Joe's got to win this one, but I think he's going to.